Now it's going.
Yeah.
William Walrond Strangmeyer was born in Roanoke, Virginia, and grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and New Brunswick, Brofus, New Jersey, a product of the post-war, pre-boomer nouveau middle class and other hyphenations. After unsuccessfully storming academia as a member of the Royal Del Dracos DTKLAMF, by studying classics, music, and psychology at Rutgers University, on which he declined to follow up or practice. He engaged in numerous twilight professions, including amusement parks, banks, bookstores, cinema, door-to-door sales like Abbott and Costello, poker games, restaurants, taxi driving, and warehouses. A 42-year-old resident of Paris, he now earns his living as an English language trainer, formatting young adults and other undesirables so that they can produce growth in business, and as a translator of business trivia. He is the former co-editor of Upstairs at Duroc, a Paris literary review, and thereby blew his chances at working class hero status. He is the author of several volumes of poetry, all slim, and has given readings to endemic to site around Paris, but also in the States. His other principal interests are various forms of combat sports and old music, doo-wop, Gregorian chant, hippie music, Czerny. He is Archon of Paris for the Moorish Orthodox Church and a member of various other organizations embracing a few essential beliefs and having even fewer doctrines, and eschews the party of evil. He has two grown daughters who are the light of his life. He seeks what everybody does. Bill Strangmeyer, I would love to welcome you to read. Please knock us out.
Okay, thank you, David.
Welcome.
I have a quote for the first poem from Theodore Rothke, Morse Gathering. As if I had broken the natural order of things in that swampland, disturbed some rhythm old and of vast importance. I call this Adrian in Paris, or the Adraniad. I'll start where I lived in those days, in the middle of times, in a Paris bar where we spoke in muddled new scripts, feigned half-true and dim-witted poise through the noise of a rough buzzing, doped up in alcohol haze, there to celebrate song and the days we were living, the life lived in Paris and not back at home. Some on a Wanderjahr, some on a somnolent walkabout, some nearing their dusty and narrow road's ends, but all of us here in Le Grand Paris, living what we'd sought to live, taking what we thought we gave, self-seekingly here in our own definition of being alive, half bathed in a razor-sharp light, glaringly dimming our nightlights and personal suns, as if from a make-believe tower of stone or a jerry-rigged lighthouse that promised more night than our ragged stone heaven at home. Almost solid, but still on the shore of pretend, and now just as far into the night-dim town square of dim old real life, and we half lost in the shadowy inwit of the war we had lost against war. Speeding, open-mouthed and thrilled through air in blank anticipation, like a happily kidnapped child, away from duty into freedom's dirty gift. Back then was full of the flotsam men, claiming a kinship they fleshed out and seasoned with jetsam convictions from an earlier storm. Well, I could let Joyce spin on out his lines, make up all his jokes and be the man who just held himself aloof. We lesser lights can quote, you know, and walk away from journalistic destiny. This he'd claim in waistcoat and his manly tweed, casting about for Penelopes with his blue and watery eyes. The thin, bitter barmaid would sneer that his wife was nice, plunk down his drink and huff off in a huff. The British tinge to his flat Kansas drone wouldn't have hidden broad Levantine smile or thin Jersey sneer, and it gave him away to the heroin babes who screwed with the boys in the mines of the marks as their music washed washed brash and sincere, all over the old in their ways, and drained off the joy from old moldy dead worlds as reproof and repression replaced all the joy they had felt in the glare of after the war. And there in the clair obscure bar, all dusty and bright or all misty and dim, apprentice clochards all playing guitars or singing with voices raw honey and rough, crowded in and drank with the leftover lost from one war too late, with fist fights and harshly lit memories and buzzes and fucks as the goal and the cost. His 40-some-year marriage was as marvelous and strange and boring as most, and as much a mystery to him as it was to her. When he met her, he loved her hands and all the rest. And when she said yes that first afternoon, he forgot all his dreams of fortunes to be made back home with memberships in service clubs with funny hats as recognition and reward and a way of giving back. But the cost of aging never occurred to his failed adventurer's mind. They saw the world much as one might while walking on one's hands, half believing the evaluating lies they sometimes saw in others' eyes. Still, he paid for their lives and made enough money as best he could without much ambition, playing on his victorious nationality, working overtime when he made acquaintances, turning them patrons and friends when he could, and contacts at the embassy. That took up most of his time as she, the little woman, sank into dependable, dependent cipherhood. Some feel that a regrettable adolescence or a dubious childhood is the foundation for later mistakes and insights, for any compassion that can be felt as well as what we hate. We want our pasts to be noticed a little, because we sometimes lack an opinion we can trust, and then we trust. And we carry hope and resentment and principles with us and never think of cliffside paths and resultant falls, or auto wrecks, or wandering maniacs let out on furlough or on austerity programs, but make of youthful pain and loss validity and gravitas, and so give honor to the pillagers that we had better slyly killed back then, we half suspect. But there are substitutions for youth time tortures that can be put in place, and if we have the luxury of a little luck, held up as paradigms of growth. But mainly, we try to live well and avenge ourselves by shoring up fragile dignity and fitting ourselves into myths of our pasts. Meanwhile, she, the loyal wife, dressed down in wifely 1950s flower prints, held love to her as she would have held a sick child in winter, trying hard to protect the fevered glow that she remembered now as shadows from the years she thought golden, now powdery vague in memory of the past she hoped had been. She never felt her center away from him, except when she was ironically joking with other bittersweet captives, held tight to him, knowing not why and knowing not why. Besides, holy matrimony, Batman. Her generation had a word, une parole, and a curé to deal with. But women often don't understand men, and often men think it's a practical joke. He dreamt of art and erections of stone, and the beery slur of his foreign tongue blew him to islets of superior calm. Though he feared the water and feared the air, he adored while avoiding the river Seine. I'm here to stay, I'll never go home, and I couldn't afford their goddamn game, and what would I do, write copy, teach school? I'm a soldier, not a sailor, so keep your sea, and fear of flights through terror keep me tied to here. I'm in literary heaven in Montmartre and Parnasse, have subsistence level glory from just sitting on my ass. And as the fire and cynicism of wartime youth paled into business and compromised metaphors for life and submission, back home, Sinatra grew bitterly, avidly old as the supply of broads dried up. Had he changed? Was age such a handicap? Had they gone stupid in this generation? Poor, tragic, inconvenient Marilyn died of failed hubris and eccentric ambition, and yet another war burned up and into the lives of the young. John Wayne, Bobain, Banana Fana, Fofane, became a caricature of himself and turned to wearing dresses in private with boozed up pique, and the young king was dead and murdered. But the poets still held up, and the shining legends and myths that the old man loved seemed valid still, arguing dignity. He impressed the tourists he met with his knowledge of racing car formulas. His voyage through life kept on, and he remained at rest in the luminous river port that he felt was vindication for abandonment of dull family ties and shadowed long-forgotten childhood. But something new is in the air, worn like fashion by young men and women, the cats and chicks in his imaginary hepness when he talked to the young guys, superb with red rucksacks, thieves and deceivers for the most part, suddenly there like Vikings or like bright blonde celebrities, smearing down on his flag and bewildering his pride. He didn't understand the bad reputation of his country in general or in certain bars, or the mutual generational contempt, though he was exempted for being too old for that particular fight. But he had his nest and his fixed point and marriage, even as the two of them aged along with a reality that was ending in shabby pathos. Glorious, righteous, conquering triumph, tarnished into bullying and braggadocio, rusted over with murder and vainglory, new hates and old arrogance. Bogart's white jacket cast off on a junk pile. The years passed by as if in darkened opiate dream. He felt that his life was purely heroic, naught else. Julius Caesar taming the barbarous Celts, but strategy called for a sometimes sheepish mien. The reflective, rainy streets dripped meaning and prose, turning to tin the crooner's and sparrow's regret. And still he felt a nagging, hidden, unpaid, shameful debt to the world that he'd been born to, unlived in, not seen to its close. A life in exile comes to feel like home, but still home gnaws and eats away the bone. And in the fulsomeness of time's turning, home came to him in those droves of long-fringed boys and girls, bringing new manners of thought and a mission to him. He needed to adapt to, adopt, to swallow whole the age. This life on earth is short, but still it's long, and fear of something we may miss may bring us force or flatten into dimness our own song, and time may save us with a dreamer's kiss. But nothing's sure, and time may bring no cure to those who wait, nor yet to those who take the bait. The young drunk's bar we landed in rumbled and rippled, gleamed bright with drunkenness and sounds. The only bar in town that let musicians pay in piles of spare change, gleaned from busking, working movie queues and metro lines. And sex was in the air all around, dry runs of new life, creating the rocker's new life, like he'd felt years before, back to Europe and living cheap, no longer down on the farm. He could be young again, to finally live with a bouquet of love, a harem who'd kneel at his feet and listen to stories of Miller and Nin, understand like his wife never could, too old, wrong generation, and learn to structure rebellion in life, the life of the mind, salvation of the soul in troubled times. He'd celebrate the lux humana and the very heart and soul of all we need to own our lives on earth. We float or rage or pace through time in lockstep with the rules we mind, and always leave behind the world we'd build, the world we'd find. The thoughts he thought were real to him, less real to all the girlish quim, inhabiting addictions grim, or futures where their hopes were slim, dependent on the windward whim. Women were, in his creed, precious jewel-like portals to expanding joy. But his evaluations of women as lovers were at best superficial, a truism for many of us. I've let the best, the brightest, and noblest get away without a second thought and pined away for what was really cheap. More dumb idealism from a junior high career made dull by learning manners with ponies and bullies. Not precious the women I've loved, but rather leaving out personality quirks and virtues, somewhere between delightful and luminous. But that's my cross to bear. Night after night, afternoon or after afternoon, he would shuffle, young in the mind, a little slower in the body, into the bar to pose for the limelight of antiquity, looking for an audience to tell his stories of writers and actors to. He bought drinks for the girls, sipped at dim dislike when boys swooped down and whisked them off. The girls never had more than a drink or two, never listened long, even when he fatuously updated his stories to tales of and lies about Ginsberg and Burroughs. His wife came by from time to time, stunned and somber and fighting back tears, but his uncured nostalgia dragged him towards youth's clear simplicity and unlined bland face. And there he saw an inversed heart, so perfect on a barstool seat, and wondered, would she give him time? He loathed his aged state and drew up plans, remembered when he'd owned the world and pulled the girls through no set plan, seduction forming like a spell, a net cast out and promptly filled, their adoration worshipful and full of dreams, as if for messianic hero waging fun. We all, unless we die in some merciful legend from the back of our mind, from the back of our lives, must face the lessening of us, the discounting of what little wisdom we've earned through errors and in pain, the death of beauty in the magic mirror of the fair of us, the fairest of them all. The apple of discord, the curse of Eris coming back, repaying every disappointed fan and every friend turned enemy who will not help us now. And how we explain this loss to ourselves may resound until the deathbed rattle marks a moment just as trivial as our first baby toy that draws attention to itself as we have tried to do for years, successful now with the tears of our beloveds or the callous jokes of paramedic clowns. It is now us on center stage or in some traffic drama in the road that we once did it in, light dying, light dying. And do the lies concocted for ourselves and others then come clear with a shuddering shock? Or do they get into eternal truths when we enter the light so clear and white that waits at the end of the tunnel we'll maybe climb? The mind, our jewel, the mind, the crown of our recreation, filled with dreams and full ideas, grown bigger than a dolphin's brain could hold, because the whole is our creation and the world. We own the world and all of heaven. We fear our own creation hell, and we live, if lacking clear imagination, in mental slums and gated make-believe old folks' homes with dust from when we're young. And this sense of ownership is what can keep us strong and pretty, safe in this common creation, the inferno where we live, forgetful of the confusion youth found filling up the time, and impatient with the carefree, dopey young, and all the blankness we forget that we ourselves could never see back then. And nighttime sometimes stalked him with a craven brick in hand. He now would move. He would, sorry. He now would move, now he would live, and now would he engage in another new time of song, return to potency, enjoy a new day, all full and long, and soaked in sun for him alone. His mind would trump the body's loss, bring back the glamour of the golden age. But one late night, he was plodding home, through street lamp darkness, fuzzy from long evenings drank, and a youthful fool hater, abandoned by love and out on a craze, struck him down with a blow in a motor car's path, and ended like that his dream of a bright new day. And that bright mind, that diamond gleaming out his head that once had thought it held the world and all earth's past within mythology, evaporated down to massive pain and eyes beseeching sky for clues as breath turned into fire, then bleeding down to the point of red at his core and out into the street for the cleaners to float away into the gutter when they opened the water to wash the streets in the morning. What will we see and what will we wish for or wish to remember of this voyage through adventure or the indolence of a final port of call? Will we feel once again young, once again babyish, or hallucinate triumph or heaven or hell or a relived life? How quickly make right in the mind we so love all of a life perhaps wasted in sloth or lived too fast and hurtful, or winding down slowly in boredom, less attractive than once we were to our objects of lust. Now, if you've been judging, you just might say, well, I haven't been to a hell dimension just of late, but I do know a thing or two about torment. And I would then reply with history and lore, I was happy in my adventure time. Wherever I was happy. At peace or at war, I knew that everyone I cared about was all right. I knew it. Time didn't mean anything. Nothing had form, but I was still me, you know? And I was warm, and I was loved, and I was finished, complete. I don't understand about God or the devil or any of it, really, but I think I was in heaven, and now I'm not. I was torn out of there, pulled out from my friends and joys by time. Everything now is tricky, dimmed, and fragile. Everything I feel, everything I touch. This is a backwards flowing purgatory, just getting through the next moment and the one after that, and knowing what I've lost. But there I was thinking of the past, and just when I thought I was out, it pulls me back in. Have I got a couple minutes?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Technically 3 more, but do what you must.
Okay.
We're hanging on every word.
Okay, a quote from Isaac Dinesen. She said to me, everything you do in life, Valdemar, you do to make me happy. Oh yes, the girl cried out, as if struck to the heart. That is how they talk to us. That is what they believe about us. Grand delusion. An artist knows an artist by the rings in their ears and the beautiful charmers they get for their sex, or else by the ring in their nose that's tugged by a master you don't even know. For here in the West, you're the product of food, the tripe of religions, and the drip from TVs, the news of the government peg boy. So just try now to sing what comes straight from your heart, if you have got a heart. But it sometimes takes guts, and the ennui of bored housewives is a product of cash and adoration of the public, Christmas tinsel on a tree. And I'll tell you what else isn't hallelujah: fashion. Okay.
So, Bill, are you looking for another short one?
Yeah, two short ones?
Please, please.
Okay. Another quote from Isaac Dinesen. And in return we get the world's distrust and our dire loneliness and nothing else. Open mic cheerleader. Good haters make good poets, their lives an open slash, their fields of tears of bouquet source for the lushes paying the wine. As you follow the road to the chapel of love, as your heart learns to grow and to fan the flame, your eyes will flow with illusions of God till you think that that is your name. Good poets make good haters, their hearts the ashes left, exacerbated sense of dream, the bittersweet taste they heft. And the last one, quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, there is properly no history, only biography. A Puritan's holiday. How come I can't find a St. Valentine's glow in the heart of the world where I live? Could the cause be because my country is dead or because of my loss of allure? I'm not used to the deficit all around the world, although it's been coming for years. I know I've been wrong and you all have been right, but what about and when did it start? Could the answer be here in my heart? The uplift comes from an eagle's view, but today is a buzzard's dream, and all my tomorrows by yesterday's lit are littered with dust from a literal wish, a thought conceived on a cloudless day, when sin was still its own reward, and fear and the sneer left lust alone, and the preacher was dozing a drone. But just for today, let's pretend it's all right to keep living ideals of the past, when men were men and the sheep were scared and romance was just a Formica dream, still good in the fridge by the cream.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you. Oh, the long poem ended with adaptations of quotes from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Michael Corleone and what was his name? Sil Dante in The Sopranos.
Wonderful.
Bill, you had such excellent rhythm both in the writing and the reading. I just think it was generally outstanding.